Listen to the people. Listen to humanity. Listen to the parrot. Parrot TV. Parrot TV. Parrot TV. Parrot TV. Parrot TV. Parrot. Listen to the people. Listen to humanity. Listen to the parrot. Parrot TV. Parrot TV. Parrot TV. Parrot TV. Parrot TV. Listen to the people. Listen to humanity. Listen to the parrot. Parrot TV. Parrot TV. Parrot TV. Parrot TV. Parrot TV. Parrot.
In a world where the quality of information available to poorer communities is doctored, tainted and sometimes regressive, where the words fake news have come to mean other people's opinions, it is vital to rely on news platforms with journalists who have feet on the ground and can report the truth. New York PARROT, a New York-based national and global news outlet, is changing the narratives of media operations. We focus on the news that matters, like self-empowerment, entrepreneurship, finances, health, security, politics, and more. We strive to curb violence, racial and economic discrimination, and to promote peace and socio-economic development of multiculturally diverse world. As we give voice to the people, we also give your business a voice and make it heard. Get your products and services off the ground by advertising on our fast-growing platform. With so much of daily visits to New York PARROT, you can't afford to be invisible to prospective clients on the website they trust the most. Our posts reach millions of people across the New York State and around the world. Advertising on our news site will unlock an audience of thousands of potential customers on your doorstep. New York PARROT is born to prosperously speak tomorrow for the voiceless.
Hello, welcome to World Inkers Network. I'm Dustin Pickering, your noble and honest host. And today we have Nandini Sahu from India to discuss her wonderful story in her new book, Shedding the Metaphors. The story is called That Elusive Orgasm. And I'm going to let her discuss it and give us some details on this. And she will read us some segments from this story as well during the program. So stay tuned and subscribe to our channel if you have not already. And if you're watching today, just hit that subscribe button on YouTube, and you can leave comments and questions yourself during the program. If you have any questions about the story for Nandini or anything else related to the program, just drop us a line and we'll be ready to answer for you. So be sure to keep in touch with us through those means. And thanks for watching today. And I want to get Nandini on here. And my first question is, of course, the stories are, not born in a vacuum. So I'm curious, how did you conceive this story? Where did this idea come from to write about this very pertinent social issue from the angle you did?
Namaskar. Thank you very much, Dustin Pickering.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you very much, World Inkers and World News Network, for giving me this opportunity to discuss one of the very important stories from my story collection, Shedding the Metaphors. The book has been published from Black Eagle Publications, USA, early this year, February this year. And the stories have been doing very good. The readers are giving very good response to the stories. And Dustin, you are one of my most important readers and critics. You have been so kind to read my stories, and you have been continuously discussing my stories with me. So today, when you invited me to read out one of the stories from this, that elusive orgasm, I thought, why not make it a critical pedagogy? Why not discuss the critical points of the story and then make it available to the readers worldwide. The readers who do not have this book, the book is available on Amazon and Flipkart. but still, it's a very good opportunity for me to read out parts of this story and discuss with you about the nuances of the story.
Hmm.
Now, coming to your question, how did I conceive the story? Well, this is the story of one of my friends who lives in England. I have changed the name of the character. I have changed the setting, the place to maintain privacy. But yet, uh, this is the real life incident of one of my friends, right? And the friend belongs to India, to West Bengal. It's part of India, and something happened with her that the story will tell you when I read out the story. Something wrong or right, I really don't know. Something happened with her which was very mysterious.
Hmm.
She could not come to terms with her own body. The title of the story is that elusive orgasm, but
Hmm.
the story is not exactly about any kind of orgasm. Rather, it's about the body politics. It's about a girl child, her important issues, the incest, the abuse of a girl child during her childhood, which actually impacts her entire life. She was abused. She
Hmm.
was, kind of given a traumatic experience by her own father during her childhood, and that lingered on. Her personality changed, her life changed. She could never be the same person anymore.
Hmm.
And I would say that this is one of my social mobility literature platforms where I talk about the girl child, the psychoanalysis of a character.
Hmm.
And also, you can say, Dustin, you can say that this is an ethnographic account and an archaeological study of a place in India where things happen to people. They have to accept those, they have to bear with those, and the
Hmm.
things that happen during their childhood, they actually impact their whole life. And
Hmm.
the character from this story, Jumpa, she is actually a victim. And I will take you to that very powerful story where I'm talking about the personal, the private accounts of the life of Jumpa.
It sounds like a really fascinating character. And so, what do you think the social relevance of the story is?
Okay, the story is definitely socially relevant because I'm talking about issues related to gender. You know, in the
Hmm.
story, the girl child and her mother, both of them have been victims of a social setup. You know, the mother has to protect her family. She has to protect her life, the economy. She has to protect herself. So somehow she takes a route which is not really very positive, which is not really very nice for the girl child. It impacts the entire life of the child. So the story is definitely about patriarchy, but at the same time, the participation of a woman, the participation of the mother of the protagonist is one important aspect of the story. So
Hmm.
basically, I'm talking about issues of gender, issues of girl child in India, in South Asia, and also I'm talking about social security for a woman through this story.
You mentioned earlier body politics. What is that exactly, and how does that relate to the story?
Well, when I say body politics, I'm talking about how the body of the girl child, Jumpa, it gets acquainted to something, it gets used to something that is difficult for her in her later years to come out of. Her body has its own needs, her body has its own politics, you know. So, in
Hmm.
order to explain that, would you allow me to read out parts of the story?
Sure, go ahead.
Yes,
Yeah,
thank
look.
you. So the title of the story is That Elusive Orgasm, and that's a part of this collection, Shedding the Metaphors, as I already told you. Uh,
Mhm.
so the beginning of the story is something like this: an elusive orgasm that was indefinable, subtle, intangible, indescribable, fulfilling, soul searching. She wanted to experience that every single time she had those rare intimacies with her own husband. But she was far from getting that. always. Because two creepy hands, a stringent body, and some distant fishy smells crawled into her cataleptic and subconscious mind during those moments. Can one even blame Jumpa for thinking about those while having sex with her husband? I suppose one cannot actually. So, the beginning of the story talks about the girl Jumpa when she is in the US and she is trying to have a normal life of intimacy with her husband. But when she tries to have it, she remembers two other creepy hands. I will come to that. Jhumpa Chatterjee was a chubby, cute little girl, all of 16, when Mai, means her mother, got into the wheelchair due to paralysis of her lower body parts. Babai, which means Jhumpa's father, Babai, he was in his late 30s and he had to bear the brunt of serving an ailing wife and looking after a teenage daughter in the small town Sonagachi, a few kilometers away from Kolkata. Now, after I discussed Jumpa's life in the beginning itself, the story narrates about Sonagachi, which is a place very close to nature because it is essentially a forest, the topography of Sonagachi. The story discusses that. So many things happened in Sonagachi, but Jumpa was far from all those things happening around her, being dedicated to her preparations for the NEET examination for medical sciences. Jumpa was an ambitious girl. She wanted to study. She wanted to be a doctor, right? All she wanted was to become a doctor. When did my partial physical paralysis became a metaphorical paralysis for Jumpa's life? Even Jumpa could not realize. Everything happened so fast, so erratic. At that point of time, was good friends with Grace and me. So I am another character in the story. The name of my character here is Ninni, and Grace is another character. And Jumpa was friends with me and Grace at that point of time when she was 16 years old. Jumpa and me were from Hindu, Brahmin families, and Grace was a Christian. We used to go to school together, play and study together, and my late father and Grace's father, they were school teachers in Sunagachi at that point of time. One day, Jumpa stopped coming to school. Her babai and Mai, they got her completely cut off from the society. There was no internet, no WhatsApp, no Facebook at that point of time. Grace was smarter than me any given day. Thus, she tried to get in touch with Jumpa by hook or crook. To my utter disappointment, my father got a transfer from that town, and then I had to leave that school. Consequently, Grace, Jumpa, and everyone else. So we got separated. My father got a transfer. I went to another town. Grace was left alone in the school, and Jumpa completely stopped coming to school. For the first few months, I wrote letters to Grace asking after Jumpa. But then there was no news of her, and no news was no good news, isn't it? We grew up. With time, my childhood friends became distant memories, though Jumpa remained a persistent pain in the secret chamber of my heart. I left India with a fellowship. I did my PhD in America and I came back to join as a professor in an Indian university in the capital of India in the year 2020. Then I visited Kerala to meet Grace, my childhood friend. After having met Grace once again on Facebook, I got connected to her. Grace had left Sonagachi after I left and she had settled down in Kerala. In the summer vacation, I went to Kerala to spend time with Grace and her children, and I took my son along, and we had a very good time. On the very first day of our meeting in Kerala, India, I asked Grace if she knew the whereabouts of Jumpa. I asked her, "Do you know where she is?" But Grace kept quiet. She did not want to discuss the story of Jhumpa with me. Her two sons got along very well with my son. And then after a week, one early morning, what happened, I heard Grace whispering over phone to Jhumpa. When I was in Kerala, Grace was whispering something to Grace over phone. She was telling, I'm quoting Grace, Jhumpa, have you lost your mind? Once again you are going to that hell? If you do it, this time I'm not going to protect you. Especially when Nini is here after so many years. The poor girl has been asking after you, and I am avoiding the question. She can't handle this. You know, she is hypersensitive. I heard Grace telling this to Jhumpa, and then I insisted that tell me the story of Jhumpa. I wanted to know everything about Jhumpa, and Grace had no other choice but to tell me about the life of Jhumpa after I had left Sonagachi, and consequently I had left India during my childhood. Now I'm going back in the story to 2005. In the year 2005, after I left Sonagachi, Grace became lonelier than ever as Jhumpa had stopped coming to school. She had joined some correspondence course to complete her education from home. Grace's father sent her to a school in Kerala to do her college and university education, and then she also fell out of touch with Jhumpa. But in the year 2008, Grace went to Sunagachi to spend the summer vacation with her parents. And then she got to know that Jhumpa's parents had been to their remote village for more than a month. That is when Grace got in touch with Jhumpa again. She entered her house, maybe discreetly. She talked to her. She took her around. She took her some restaurants. She tried to give her a normal life because Jhumpa had been caged inside her house for all these years. And then Grace took her out of that during the absence of Jhumpa's parents. Then she took her to the church. She took her to the confession box of the church. And then she insisted that if there is some pain in the heart of Jhumpa, then she should speak out to the benevolent God standing inside the confession box. And that is when Grace and her brothers they put a tape recorder to record what Jhumpa was confessing. She knew, Grace knew that this is unethical. She knew that one should not be doing it. One should not be recording the confession of a person. But then Grace had no other option. She wanted to know what had happened in the life of Jhumpa. That is how she put the tape recorder. And then after that, once Jhumpa had confessed about whatever had happened to her, Grace listened to her. And then the tape recorder says this. I'm quoting what was recorded. Jhumpa spoke, rather, she keened her heart out in the confession box, quote unquote. Oh, Lord of this beautiful, tranquil place, I want to share my story with you here. I'm confused. I don't see a road ahead of this tunnel. When I was in class 12th, Mai was in the wheelchair and my babai had to work whole day. My parents were ardent devotees of some ferocious looking goddess whose temple was in the basement of our house. Babai performed pujas there for hours every day. They did Kumari puja, the Kumari sadhana. Kumari means an unmarried girl, right? So they did Kumari sadhana. Babai and Mai told me I was the offering, I was the prasadam, the offering to the goddess, and I was a sacred girl. I was a pious girl. That is why they stopped me going to school from going to school. And that night, Babai did an exclusive puja for me when my was chanting the mantra. Once I was offered as prasad to the goddess. Babai took me to the bathroom to cleanse me of the worldly pains, sorrows, and sufferings and sins. He gave me a bath in his own hands like never before. It was uneasy for me in the beginning, but he explained that He was the devotee, the sadhak of the goddess, and I was the prasadam. I was the offering. So I need not feel shy, and I should allow him to do it by just closing my eyes and by surrendering to him. I did as Babai instructed. Mai was asleep by that time in her room. Babai bathed me. He touched my breasts and genitals tenderly, and then he vigorously rushed into me, entered me when I bled so much. It pained me. It was very, very hurtful. I cried. Babai consoled me. He put me in his arms and put me to sleep after that act. Since that night, every night, he follows the ritual of bathing me. I am his prasadam. He repeats everything, and I don't mind it anymore. I like whatever he does to my body. In fact, these days I don't get sleep unless Babai does this to me and puts me to sleep. But when I don't like, well, what I don't like here is Babai and Mai don't allow me to go to school anymore, not to meet anyone, and not even to the maid. I am not allowed to go out. I miss my friends. I am no longer preparing for the medical entrance examination. All the dreams that I had are actually forgotten now. Today, I am relieved after confessing this before you, O benevolent God, whoever you are. I am relieved and I am going to have a secluded, secret, clandestine existence forever in my life. This is my only worry. Shall I never experience freedom like Grace and Nini and others out there? So, this is what Jumpa confessed. After her confession, we listened to that tape recorder. Jumpa came out with tears in her eyes. After listening to that, I was very angry. Grace and her brothers, they met the church authorities and devised a plan to take me out of that, to take Grace, to take Jhumpa out of that snare. Luck was in their side as Jhumpa's parents were in their village for 2 months. Grace counseled Jhumpa day and night about normal man-woman relationship as well as about father-daughter relationship. Jhumpa realized that she was being trapped into a bottomless pit and only Grace could take her out of it. Jhumpa dreamed of becoming a nurse, if not a doctor. She cooperated and within a month she was baptized to Christian faith. Her visa was applied as an independent adult with special recommendations from the church and she was keen on going to the US along with other staff nurses to the to serve the underprivileged children in America. It was granted. She flew from India and her parents returned. After they came back, the parents were very angry. They threatened Grace that we are going to get you punished. But then Grace said that they were illegally molesting a girl child, so they better keep quiet. And then Babai had no other choice but to keep quiet. After that, I was told that Jhumpa had a good life in America. She did her Bachelor of Science in nursing and then she became a staff nurse and then she had a good life. Then she fell in love with one person. She fell in love with Abraham. Abraham got married to her. But after that, what happens is devastating. Abraham tries to have a normal physical closeness, intimacy with his wife, but Jhumpa never responds to that. Jhumpa's body was craving for something else. She could never get in touch with her husband. Things were not very simple. Initially, Abraham thought that Jhumpa was shy when he wanted to have intimacy with her. He thought that Jhumpa was very shy. Thus, he waited patiently for the consummation of of their marriage. But Jhumpa locked her room every night after dinner, whispering to herself. Her body was not prepared to accept the touch of any other man, not even her husband. Her body had its own chemistry. Abraham could not understand this, but he knew that Jhumpa did not like physical closeness with him. His only desire was to give her an orgasm, a massive, fulfilling orgasm. He cuddled her did foreplay with care and love, tried to take her to the trance where the woman desires the man, but everything failed. And this continued. After some time, the husband, Abraham, he became very upset and then they got distanced from each other. Abraham tried his best to maintain a very cordial relationship, friendship, romantic love, and then physical relationship with his wife, but nothing worked. Jhumpa was lost. Her existential, empirical questions about life troubled her. She wanted a break and she called Grace if she could come to India and spend some time with her. And then at that point of time, I met Grace and Jhumpa once again. So this is where I was told about the entire story of molestation of the girl child and about Grace supporting Jhumpa and Jhumpa not getting an orgasm from her husband. I was shocked with this unwarranted story of my long lost friend. The question was mine so selfish that in order to protect her future with her provider, her protector and caretaker husband, she became a party to the vicious plan of her husband and she sacrificed on her own daughter? I somehow blamed myself for leaving Sonagachi when Jhumpa needed me and Grace. And then this is when I told Grace, let us save the girl. She needs our protection. Next morning, Jhumpa came to Kerala, but this time I saw Jhumpa, a grown up woman in her mid 30s, a very different person. She was very careless about the body, she was absent minded. Her eyes were lost in the distant horizon. She used to whisper to herself, I never found her a normal person. And because I knew her story, so I did not mind that. Rather, me and Grace, we tried to take her back to our normal childhood days. We had a wonderful time in Kerala. Jhumpa, me, and Grace. We went to different places. We had a very good trip to many tourist places. Our children became very friendly with Jhumpa, and she tried to smile. But still, the unmistakable presence of someone in her room, in her life, was very much there. And then what happens? One morning, Babai calls Jhumpa on her mobile. Babai was always informed about Jhumpa's whereabouts. He knew where Jhumpa was going. And then he called her, come home, see your ailing mother. She is going to die after a few days. Your presence is required. But I and Grace were not in favor of sending Jhumpa back to Kolkata to live with her parents again. After a couple of days, we received a call from Jhumpa's Babai, and then she was sent to Kolkata. Despite our protests, Jhumpa went to Sonagachi. Mai was in a very bad shape. Babai looked fine. He was in his 50s, early 50s. Babai didn't exchange a word with Jhumpa. They had met after more than a decade. He had no complaints. He was calm and quiet. He was busy looking after his ailing wife, taking care of Jhumpa's food and comfortable stay in their house. Jhumpa's room in the first floor was really done after her long absence. She felt the unmistakable presence of someone in her room even when she was alone. Was it the calm before the storm? Jhumpa wondered. Then one night, what happened? Grace agreed to my idea that Jhumpa was going to meet her parents, so we should make a video call and look at Jhumpa and her activities throughout the night. So Jhumpa went to Kolkata, and me and Grace, we called her overnight. Throughout the night, we made a video call. In the meantime, I asked Grace what exactly was the problem between Abraham and Jhumpa. Now that Babai was not in her life anymore, Jhumpa had never got an orgasm with Abraham. This is what Grace reported me. I suspected that a simplistic approach, and because Abraham seemed to be a very nice person, so why should not a wife be fulfilled? Why should not she get an orgasm from her husband? Was my question. I doubted that something very complex, something very layered was there in the life of Jhumpa. I asked Grace, tell me, Grace, why should an orgasm be an elusive thing for a healthy female when she was sexually active with a healthy man? And then Grace told me perhaps Jhumpa was missing her father. She was missing the touch of her father. Then I said, what nonsense! Too much reading. Why should you think like that? But anyway, we had assumptions. We thought that Jhumpa was missing the touch of her father, the creepy hands of her father to which she was used throughout her early youth and her childhood. That is how she could never become comfortable close to her husband. She could never get an orgasm from her husband. This is what we assumed. But anyway, we kept quiet and we made video calls to Jhumpa when she was with her parents throughout the night. Now, I will come to the last part of the story. Jhumpa knew the purpose of our video calls and she was agreeable with us. After 7 p.m. till 9 p.m., she was with her Mai downstairs in the house and then she went to her room. We talked casually, talked about her mother's health, but everyone was tight lipped about her father. We did not ask about her father. She wanted to sleep at 10 p.m., and we three were talking about her return tickets for the US and our trip to Shillong and many other things we were talking, but we never talked about her father. We wanted to avoid that topic. Jhumpa was shocked, startled by a suppressed knock at her door at 10 p.m. in the night when we were on the video call. Well, we almost knew it that somebody will come and knock the door of Jhumpa. That is why we were making video calls throughout the night. WhatsApp video calls we were making. Jhumpa, just shout at him, we told her. Shout at him that if he continues to knock your door, you will call the neighbors from the balcony. You will call the police. Don't just open your door and keep the video call on. Get my point? Grace was yelling at the peak of her voice to Jhumpa because we never wanted her to open the door of her bedroom for father, for her babai. I was shaken, I was bewildered, I was scared, my BP went low, my mouth was dry, I started crying, I could not talk. Grace kept on talking. Jhumpa, you have to survive the night. You have to withstand. Be strong, okay? You are a true devotee of the Lord. Be a faithful wife to your husband. You are an upright, virtuous woman. Don't forget that. Don't open the door. We kept on shouting. Jhumpa's face looked different after a point. Babai was knocking the door continuously. Jhumpa's face looked different. Her mood changed. Jhumpa whispered, no, Babai, please go, don't do this to me. And then we heard her Babai telling her from the door, open the door, Jhumpa, my love, I'm here for you. I will take care of you. I will pacify, comfort your sad body. You are my prasadam. How can you forget that, Jhumpa? You were born only for a devotee like me. I won't hurt you. I will put you to sleep. You look so tired. You haven't slept since ages. Yes, Jhumpa had not slept since ages. She had never had an orgasm. She had never got fulfillment of her mind and body after she left India. She was terribly missing her babai and his touch. Jhumpa looked colorless, emotionless, motionless, weary, teary. Before going to open the door, she disconnected our video call and she switched off her phone. Well, that night, Jhumpa slept peacefully. We knew it. Next morning, I had a lump in my throat. My mind and my body were in terrible pain. I was thinking about the existential issues of life. So this is the story.
Just wow, and the ending especially just really emphasizes the entire the import of the story. It's impressive how you structured it, and you call the book "Shedding the Metaphors." And I noticed at the very beginning of the story, you have this metaphor of the mother who becomes crippled, and there's a metaphor drawn from that. But later on, you see that throughout the story, this is like something very real. It's not really a metaphor. It's something actually that's actually happening, and it's an actual event. And so it's just you transform it from a kind of as the title of the book, Shedding the Metaphors, says, you transform it from this kind of metaphor at the beginning to an actual social issue. So I was wondering, do you want to expose social hypocrisies through the story? Is that one of the aims of the story?
Thank you, Dustin, for asking this important question. Yes, as I told you in the beginning itself, that this is my social mobility literature. You look at the layers of the story. Mai, which means Jumpa's mother, she wanted to protect the economy of her family.
Mm-hmm.
She did not want her husband, probably, to remarry, to get another wife, because she was in the wheelchair. She never wanted her husband to remarry. She never wanted her husband to go out of the house. So she sacrificed her daughter. She made her a victim of child abuse. She made her a victim of incest. She wanted to protect herself, and her daughter was victimized because of that. So, this is how I am trying to expose the hypocrisy of a society.
It's quite. I don't have. There's just there's no word. There's no word for the way you structure the story, and then you end with a very personal note of how you personally relate to the incidents and then the story, and how this is a long-term thing, and it's just a really deep and layered story. And so I wondered if you do you believe that this is a story that would be unique to Indian literature?
Well, I don't think that I am the right person to answer to that question, because the readers should be in a position to tell you if it is a very unique and a different story. But yes, the kind of response I am getting from the reviewers, from the readers, uh, definitely convinces me that this story has created ripples. People have been disturbed by this story. The book is published in end February, which is the beginning of March, and in the month of April, by last 2 months, within 2 months, there are more than 15 reviews of this book in many newspapers and journals and magazines, and almost all the reviewers are talking about this story. They are talking about the uniqueness of this story.
Mm-hmm.
There are many writers in India who talk about social issues, but probably what is unique about this story is the rawness of it.
Yes,
I am not
absolutely.
mincing the words. I'm not mincing the words. I'm not trying to use any metaphors here.
Mm-hmm.
I have told the story of Jhumpa very honestly. It's
Right.
about the relationship of a girl child with her parents, how it should be and how it should not be, how childhood trauma can impact the life of a woman or even a man, anybody for that matter. Maybe this is the uniqueness of the story.
And I agree. It's extraordinarily raw, and it brings straight to the core of an issue that a lot of people don't even feel comfortable discussing. I mean, incest is a really tricky topic for a lot of people, and I think the fact that you just show the psychological nature of a person who goes through that process, who goes through that entire kind of trauma, and how that relates to their whole entire life. It doesn't just like, it's not just the moment thing. And maybe hopefully some people will read this and be healed, or be willing to open up about their own traumas, and even maybe you can strike to the core of people participating in this kind of stuff, to realize that this is not something that's just in the moment. I think that's really important to know, that these things really impact people's entire lives. It's not just a simple one-time thing or one-off. It's not, I mean, it may feel like that to the perpetrator, but it really breaks a lot of people's spirits and hearts throughout their entire lives. So I think you've really brought that to the ultimate conclusion there at the end. And it doesn't just affect the person, it also affects those people around that person. And so I think you really did a remarkable job of showing the entire scope, of such a problem in society. So I really commend you on that. It's a really intriguing story, and it's deep, and it's a very sad and traumatic story. So thank you for sharing that with us today on the program. Would you like
Thank
to
you.
share any advice with fellow writers out there watching as in conclusion today?
Well, Dustin, I really don't have any advice for the fellow writers, but
Hmm.
just one thing that even I advise myself, including all the writers out there: be honest in your writing. Don't mince words, write the truth. And
Hmm.
writing that doesn't impact the society is of no use. One has to talk about the social
Right.
issues, one has to create mobility for the society through writing. And this
Hmm.
is what I have been trying to do. And on a personal note, Dustin, I truly appreciate your efforts at bringing out these kind of important issues through the programs that you have been doing at a very deeply personal level. I must thank you very much for taking out time to read all my stories and critically engaging with me, discussing my stories with me one by one.
Hmm.
I truly appreciate you, and thank you very much, World Inkers and World Views News Network, and
Hmm.
my very dear friend Dustin Pickering. I'm extremely grateful to you. Thank you so much.
I'm grateful to you as well. I think you're doing a really fantastic job with your work, and your story, the shadow, what was it called, the shadow of a shadow. I want to
Yeah,
recommend that. I've recommended that to a few people. I want to recommend that to our viewers as well. To take a look at that
yeah,
story. It's a
yeah,
really interesting story. I won't say anything about it. Just read it, find it
yeah,
online and read it, and
yeah,
leave your comments on that. And it's a remarkable story, and
yes,
I love how you bring some of the, especially feminism and eco criticism and all, and like in your works, like there's just so much compacted in these stories but it's not, as you say, this is like raw real life stuff. I mean, it's like
yeah,
it's not meant like, this title of the book, shedding the metaphors. I mean, that automatically that should tell you what kind of work you're doing, and it's a wonderful stuff you're doing. So would you like to share any shout outs, thank yous to, I don't know, your publisher or friends, family, anything like that at the end here?
yes. Darshan, this morning when you sent me a message that you were reading Shadow of a Shadow very carefully and you were looking at the nuances of the story, I thought maybe our next program with you, if possible, it can focus on that. Shadow of
Okay.
a Shadow is a story on queer politics. It is about two lesbian women
Mhm.
and their female bonding, about their connection, and also how the society rejects that kind of a
Mhm.
relationship. The story is
Right.
about that. Maybe our next program we can read out Shadow of a Shadow and have a detailed discussion about queer politics. Thank you very much for reading the story so carefully.
It's a wonderful story, and it's layered as well. I mean, you start off with the discussion of Sappho. I mean, so you get kind of into literary criticism to an extent in that story as well. And I really like that about reading, works by, people who are educated, that they add layers to their stories where it's not just like, cut and dry linear fashion. It's really it goes into different aspects of life, and it presents a holistic kind of view of things. And I think that story especially was really interesting to me because of some of the metaphors you used in there were really pretty intense and interesting, and it gets you to think about what you're reading. And that's what I look for in a good work of literature, is like I want to think about what I'm reading. I don't want to just read it and be like, okay, that's it. I want to be able to think about it and unravel the layers of each piece, carefully. So thanks for being on the program today. It's been wonderful to have you, and I hope to see you again pretty soon. We'll discuss the shadow of a shadow, and we'll talk about that, and that'll be wonderful. So keep a lookout for World Inkers Network in the future with you as well. So well, it was wonderful talking with you.
Yes, Justin. Thank you for having me here. Thank you. Bye bye.
You're welcome. Bye bye. So you've been watching World Inkers Network, and if you want to donate to our program, you can do so by our PayPal handle. I'm going to pull that up for you in just a second. It's paypal.me/nyparrot, just for those who are curious. And I'm going to put the banner up here in just a second, the support banner. Or you can go to this right here, paypal.me/nyparrot, to donate a little extra money if you have some. If you don't, we have several anthologies and several books we've published at World Inkers Network, Printing and Publishing. You can take a look at those. We just released a book by Vandana Kumar, which is doing a really good job in the market. I'm really proud of that book. And so if you want to buy that, it's pretty inexpensive and on Flipkart and Amazon.India, and it's also on Amazon and all over the world and so forth. And so if you don't want to just throw some money our way, you can buy some of our books, and that'll go into ours as well as our authors' pockets. And so you're supporting the arts and you're supporting artists if you support us. So we would like to hear from you on that regard. Or you can buy one of our anthologies. We have the various literary parrot anthologies online as well. And if you want to be on the program, you can contact me, Dustin Pickering, at publication.worldinkers@gmail.com. Don't forget the dot there between publication and World Inkers. Some people forget that and it doesn't get to me. So just please get in touch with me through that email, and definitely get you on the program. And just let me know what you want to discuss: literature, arts, music, scholarship, anything related to the arts. We'd love to hear from you. So definitely send me your bio and a headshot. If you can do that, I'll make a flyer for you, and we'll get that going on, get you on the program, and whenever we have an available time and date. So we do this program usually on Tuesdays and Saturdays. If you want to be on the program, pick a day, we'll get you on. So thanks for watching, and go back and subscribe to our channel, and we'll talk soon. You guys out there who are, how I end the program, just tell you to get to writing. Just go out there, do some writing of your own. We're wonderful to hear from you.
Listen to the people. Listen to humanity. Listen to the parrot. Parrot TV.